Hey everybody, welcome back to When Harry Met Board Games. I am Harry, and before we go any further, please don't forget to hit the like button down below and subscribe to our channel if you're interested in some more board game related content. Today we have another review. I'll be reviewing another game, and I usually try to focus on some more obscure games or games that have gotten less attention via social media and YouTube and similar platforms. And today I will be reviewing this one right here, Rheinlander, designed by Reiner and originally published by Face to Face Games back in 1999. I believe this game is out of print, has been out of print for a long time. And it's a game that I really appreciate, but at the same time, nobody ever talks about. I'm going to set this game up, show you how it plays, and then get back to you with my final thoughts. So this is what the game looks like, set up for 3 players. We have the red player, the black player, and the green player. Every player starts with a hand of 5 cards, and each of these cards has a number on it, which corresponds with each of the different sections on the board, right? There is a section for each number going all the way from 1 to 54. And each of these sections is divided into 3 spaces. You have 2 regular land spaces on the outer ends of the number, and then down the middle of the number you have your river or your water space. And the only way to build on a water space is if the 2 land spaces are already occupied. So you cannot choose to build on a water space, but you can choose which of the 2 outer land spaces you want to build upon. But in order to build on the water spaces, you must have no other choice in that number. So you also have these different building tokens around the board. So you have your castles, which look like these, like this. This fortifies your power in a specific region. This is an area majority, area control game, and basically allows you to put down one of your knights, and your knights are represented by these circular discs right here. You get to put one of your knights on top of that castle, which adds to your power or your strength in that specific region. You also have churches, which look like this. And basically, every duchy of yours that has at least 1 church, it doesn't matter how many churches your duchies have, but if your duchies, each of your separate duchies that has at least 1 church, will get you one of these bishop tokens, right? So if you have a couple of duchies that have at least 1 church or more in them, you'll end up getting a few more of these bishop tokens. And whichever player has the most bishops at a point in the game will have access to the Archbishop Pawn. And basically, the Archbishop is the only way where you can build on a space that's already occupied. The Archbishop allows you to replace an opponent's disc or their knight with one of your own color. And that can swing the area majority in that region, or at least strengthen and secure the majority that the player already had. So let's see how the game actually plays. On a player's turn, what they're doing is they're discarding one of these numbered cards. And again, they number all the way from 1 through 54. And by discarding a card, basically you're allowed to place one of your knights, these circular discs, on one of the 2 land spaces of that number, or again, in the water space if the 2 land spaces are occupied. So if I discard this 37, it allows me to place this disc on the 37th spot. So the 37th spot is here. And this spot, actually, the river breaks up. So you have 37 right here and a land space right here. I'm going to choose to place it right here on the side where the church is at. Now, what's interesting is that this still does not represent a duchy, right? For it to be a duchy, you actually have to have 2 adjacent spaces. So once I place something down, let's say on the 38 or on the 35, and I have 2 adjacent, I would then have an official duchy, and I show and signify that by placing one of my nice little duke pieces right here, somewhere in that duchy. And that signifies that that's a duchy and that I am officially the duke who oversees this duchy, and it belongs to me. Now, in subsequent turns, if you ever have a card that you feel like is not advantageous to you, or at least doesn't fit with your overall strategy, you can choose to discard the said card. Right here, let's say the 8. Let's say I'm not interested in building an 8, or let's say I cannot build an 8 because all 3 spots are occupied. I can choose to discard this to place one of my discs on any spot on the board where I already am adjacent to another of my existing knights. So for example, I can discard that 8 to, in a future turn, place this down on the 35. By the way, you're only discarding 1 card per turn and placing down 1 knight per turn. However, over the course of the game, you do have an additional option that you could do on your turn, and it's you could place down one of your 3 Bastion pieces. And basically the way a Bastion works is you place it on any land space you want, and that's just a blocked space. It's very similar to the disaster tiles or the catastrophe tiles in Tigris and Euphrates, for those who played that game, where basically you're just permanently blocking a spot on the board for the rest of the game. Unlike the catastrophe tiles, you cannot put it on top of something that's already occupied. You could only put it on an empty spot. And you have 3 of these that you could use throughout the course of the game. Now, something that's the interesting part of this game, where the area majority really gets interesting, is as you continue to build. So for example, I've done this. Now let's say I build over here next to this church tile. That allows me, or this castle tile I should say, that allows me to place a disc on top of that tile. And now this officially becomes a region, and I have 2 already in that region. And as I build that region, and it expands, and I gain influence, and I build towards maybe another region, right? You can have a region next to it right here. And this is a smaller region. And again, I have a duke here to represent that this is a duchy. And this player has a duke here to represent that this is a duchy. They also have access to a castle. And now, let's say we place down a knight that unifies these 2 duchies. Now what happens is we count up how many knights, this has now become united into 1 duchy. We count how many knights each respective duchy has. This one here has 4, including with the castle. And this one here has 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the green player has the majority here and basically absorbs the red player's duchy. Now, it doesn't mean that you lose, the red player does not lose his or her knights. However, because this castle is now part of this duchy, this knight is replaced with one of the green player's knights. And now the red player eliminates their duke. They're no longer the duke of this newly formed duchy. And they collect compensation. Kind of like in a choir, Sid Sackson's A Choir, when 2 hotel companies would merge, the smaller company would pay off money or dividends to the players who had majorities or secondaries or tertiaries in those investments in those companies. Well, here, this player is going to receive compensation. First of all, they're going to collect 1 point just for having a duke. And then they will collect additional points. So each duke, which is basically you only have 1 in each given duchy, is going to score you 1 point. You're also going to score 1 point for every church or castle that was in your part of the duchy, your smaller duchy that just got absorbed. So in this case, there's 1 castle. You would also get a point for every church, and you will get points for the different cities that are connected to your duchy that all range anywhere from 2 to 4 points. So now, at the end of the game, the value of the dukes goes up, because at the end of the game, each of your dukes is going to score you 5 points. And you're also going to score a bonus 5 points for whoever has the Archbishop at the end of the game. So basically, this game is about trying to establish large large, secure duchies, but also strategically and tactfully setting yourself up with smaller yet valuable duchies that can score you lots of points during the game as the game goes on, right? Because if you're gonna just hope for a big payoff at the end of the game, it might not be enough to outdo the players who are accruing points throughout the course of the game. So a very small yet strategically situated duchy can score you lots of points. For example, you can be in a small duchy that's connected to lots of valuable cities, and if it gets absorbed by a bigger duchy, yes, that player will eventually gain those points from those cities, but currently, at the time being, you can gain lots of points from those cities, and if you combine it with some other very powerful duchies, overall, you might have enough to win this game. And that's pretty much how the game Rheinlander plays. At the end of each turn, the players draw one card and replenish back up to 5, and they keep on going until the game comes to an end. When one player has no more knights available, that is the final turn of the game. So as you can see, this game is basically just a area control, area majority game where players are vying for different parts of the board and they're competing to get their presence on the table represented by their knights and their dukes, and trying to grow and expand their duchies as large as possible, eventually overtaking and merging with other smaller duchies, and also strategically knowing when to allow a bigger duchy to merge with it and collect on those points, right? And you're manipulating a bunch of different things and a lot of different ways of scoring points based on the size of your duchy and the buildings that your duchy is attached to. I've always really enjoyed this game. I am a big fan of area majority, area control, so that's a disclaimer there, right? If area majority and area control is not your thing, this game is not going to be for you. So let me just give you a few of my final thoughts and final grades. And with my final grades, I usually try to be objective, right? Because subjectively speaking, I can give this game a really, really high grade because I like it so much. But I'm trying my best to distance myself from my inner subjectivity, right? Which is pretty much impossible to do, right? But as much as possible, I'm trying to just look at it with, new eyes and say, hey, how would this game truly rate to the average person? So first of all, let's start about components. This is definitely a D-. And the only reason I'm not going to give this an F is because I personally do like the little pieces that are the dukes. They're nice little, men sitting on a horse, plastic pieces. They're not amazing, but by 1999 standards, I still think they're pretty good. The colors that are represented are decent and so on and so forth. However, the board, it's ugly. The artwork leaves a lot to be desired. The pieces they use for knights are little, circular disc. I think I would have preferred chits even, definitely cubes. I would have preferred cubes. I know a lot of people hate cubes, cube pushers and all that stuff, but disc, I can't, I can't work with that. So the cards look really, really bad. The graphic design of the cards. So even the card stock is not really great. So yeah, I definitely have to give this a D- for components. Now, as far as theme is concerned, I'm actually going to give it a C-. And of course, that's with the caveat that this is a Rainer Knizia game, and his games tend to not be the strongest thematically speaking. And I know that there's people on opposite sides of the camp as to how they feel about that. I think he tries his best to implement theme, and sometimes it comes out more than others. I feel like to some extent you feel the theme, you feel like you're growing your duchies and you're strategically trying to see where you expand them because you want to get to certain buildings. You want to touch certain buildings that are going to give you different benefits, right? Like a very valuable city that has lots of points that'll score you, or you want to like expand your kingdom towards the churches so you could expand your religious influence and be able to use that archbishop, you know, very effectively later on in the game. Or you want to expand towards a castle to fortify, you know, your walls and to make sure that your duchy, you know, your kingdom, so to speak, is safe, right? And secure. So you do feel a little bit of those things. But, you know, for the most part, it's not too immersive of a thematic experience. So I give it a C-. And then gameplay, I give it a solid B+. Now, this game speaks to me, and area majority tends to speak to me. So why not give it an A? Again, I'm just trying to be objective. It's an area majority game. It's simple card play. The mechanisms are very, very light. But I like how they're combined, you know, and how they gel together and work. And again, the bias of area majority, area control would make me lean towards a higher grade probably for gameplay. But I want to be objective, and because of that, I give it a B+. And then finally, the novelty factor. You know, I'm going back to 1999, and even by 1999 standards, the novelty factor isn't very high. I'm going to give this game a C, because lots of the ideas incorporated here are not necessarily innovative. They're not necessarily revolutionary. They're not new to Rheinlander in any way, shape, or form. You know, area majority, area control, it was truly, you know, Wolfgang Kramer and Robert Ulrich, he never gets any credit, or Ulrich, from the co-designer of El Grande. They really put area control, area majority on the map. And it seems that after that, Reiner Knizia really, you know, put his name in the hat as far as trying to get lots of area majority games. Because if you see that latter half of that decade in the 90s, Reiner Knizia put out lots of area majority games, and Rhinelander was one of them. He also borrowed from Sid Sackson's, you know, acquire mechanism, where you are basically using area control, area majority. So I guess to some extent, Sid Sackson back in the 60s invented area majority, where basically you're expanding these areas, which in Acquire was your hotel companies, and eventually they connect with other smaller areas and they merge and become one, and the owner of the smaller area, or the person who had majority in the smaller area, collects some sort of dividend or some sort of payoff, some compensation for having been absorbed, for having lost the majority in that area. Because now it's just one area, and the person who has the majority in the larger area is really truly the major shareholder in Acquire. And it's the same idea here. You're no longer the duke of that newly formed duchy. When two duchies form together into one, the person who has the majority, or who was the duke in the larger duchy, is going to take over the smaller one, and you're going to receive, as the duke of the smaller area, you're going to receive a compensation, right? And you're going to get some money, aka your victory points. So nothing really innovative. The card play to designate where you go in the regions or where you get to place people, that's interesting. And it's neat, it's cool. It's not necessarily groundbreaking, but it is slightly different as opposed to some of these area control games where, you know, El Grande, you kind of are free with some limitations as far as like where the king is, allows you where to put, you know, your players or your pieces down. But other than that, you kind of have freedom of choice. Here, you're very limited to some extent. You either play the card, you play your piece on the card number, the space with the allotted number on it, or you could just discard that card to place a piece next to anywhere that's adjacent to another one of your knights. Nothing revolutionary, but again, I feel like he just combines and interweaves all of these different concepts in a very nice and neat way, which is why I feel better about its gameplay, the B+, than I do about its novelty factor, which is just a solid C. So overall, I'm going to give this game a solid C+. Again, I like this game a lot, and it would probably, if I was being subjective about it, it would probably be more like a strong B for me, maybe even B+, but because I'm trying my best to be objective about it, I'm going to give it a C+. And that's it. That's my review of Rhinelander. If it sounds interesting to you, check it out. Again, with the warning that it is out of print, and you might have to find a used copy and pay a pretty dollar for it. I don't know. Maybe there's some good prices on the Board Game Geek market. But my copy, for the time being, is not for sale. So with that being said, thank you so much for joining us here at When Harry Met Board Games. I am Harry. Again, don't forget to hit the like button down below, subscribe to our channel, and I will check you guys next time. Take care. Bye-bye.